Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of peak music, checking out some of the best music that some of y'all's favorite artists have ever made. We're going to be checking out some songs Ohia, which think we've done something from this group before. Although it's not really a group, is it? It's just Jason Molina's solo project. We're going to be looking at something off of the Magnolia Electric Company album, which came out in 2003. This song is called Farewell Transmission. Let's dive in, see what Jason is bringing to the table today. Very twangy. It's got a nice western vibe to it.
The whole place is dark.
Nice blues rock idea here too.
Every light on this side of the town. Suddenly it all went down. Now we'll all be brothers of the fossil fire of the sun. Now we will all be sisters of the fossil blood. Someone must have set 'em up. Now they'll be working in the cold gray rock. Now they'll be working in the hot mill steam. Now they'll be working in the concrete, in the sirens and the silences now. All the great set up hearts, all at once, start to beat.
So that guitar riff is loosely based off of the vocal melody there.
After tonight, if you don't want this to be
Yeah, a lot of the same key notes.
a
The melody,
secret out
the
of
rhythm differs a little bit.
I will resurrect it. I'll have a good go at it. I'll streak his blood across my beat. Dust my feathers with his air. Feel his ghost breathing down my back. I will try, no, whatever I try. I will be gone, but not forever.
Every time we get back to this bigger section, I feel like we add another layer. This time we have the vocal Oz in the background, providing harmony.
But not forever. Real truth about it is, no one gets it right. Real truth about it is, we're all supposed to try. There ain't no end to the same
Interestingly, this guitar over here doesn't really change much ever.
Real truth about it is, my kind of life's no better off. It's got the map, or if it's lost, we will try. No, whatever we try, we will be gone, but not forever.
These cool little embellishing lines from guitar, a steel guitar in particular, I think.
Farewell
We of course have this
transmission.
electric guitar sitting here, just soloing over there almost.
Listen. Long dark blues. Listen. Long dark blues. Listen. Long dark blues. Listen.
All right. This is definitely a song that, to me, primarily sits in the realm of texture, atmosphere, and layering for the most part. I think there is one core idea that sits at the foundation of this, even with the verse and the chorus, one being larger than the other. The more I listened to the drum pattern, the bass pattern, this guitar over here, this primary texture that was there from the beginning, none of this really changes. The riffs, the loops, it's all pretty much the same. I think some of these ideas grow a little bit. We'll start off with something a bit on the simpler side. Maybe the bass was just playing four root tones, and then 3 minutes later, the bass is playing some eighth notes, some little syncopation, still hitting those four tones on the beat, but exploring the room between the beats and creating something with a little bit more movement, a little bit more syncopation to it, a little bit more expressiveness. This is sort of how everything feels like to me. The song doesn't really grow in a linear way across this track that would see us moving from like section to section, from like verse to chorus to bridge or anything like that. It does have a nice A to B section here, something that I probably would call verse chorus. We do that 5-6 times. It definitely borrows from the Americana folk structure in that realm. But generally speaking, if you look at the foundation to each of these sections, it's all just a lot of the A section with varying amounts of layering on it. And so we do have a type of linear growth, and we do see a little bit of linear movement if you view it from this perspective. The song is constantly growing. Every section, every return to a section brings more instruments with it. And those instruments occasionally bring expanded versions of the ideas that they had introduced previously. It's an interesting way to build a song. It isn't just the slow burn layering, but it isn't linear either. It's cyclical. It's constantly looping back in on itself, but every moment is new. Every moment is fresh. Every time I felt as wrapping up an 8-bar phrase, I was thinking, well, what's around the corner? What does the song have in store for me next? I find that to be interesting, and the bouncing back and forth between a more layered and a less layered section with the chorus and the verse respectively allows the song to have peaks and valleys too, unlike a straightforward slow burn, which is just a constant rise of ideas, each layer being added over time. We're also removing layers on this. We add a few, remove a couple, add a few, remove a couple, so we still generally have an aspect of growth, but we still have peaks and valleys along that journey, which is a really strong way of writing anything. Honestly, I mean, this is story writing 101, even looking at a narrative, whether you're, a book or a film script or whatever. You want peaks, and then you got to bring it down so you can rise again. Constant rising is just fatigue for most audiences. And in music, it's the same way. One of the easiest ways to write a song that's guaranteed to keep people engaged is to increase the intensity, lower the intensity, increase it higher, lower it not as low as you did last time, a little higher above that. So you do have this linear growth, but it fluctuates over time. It's composed of peaks and comprised of peaks and valleys rather than a straight line. And it's interesting how we can hear all of this happen in a song that honestly is the same thing at the beginning as it is at the end, at least on the foundation. The bass, couple of the main guitars, the vocal melody, the drums, they're the same from start to finish. The song shouldn't feel as much of a journey as it does. And yet they accomplish that through fantastic use of layering and slight modification and recontextualization. It's all about creating some ideas and, modifying them later on, bringing them back with a little bit of extra spice. It's masterful in a lot of ways in that I'm not going to say that every single moment of this 7.5 minute song captivated me, but I think generally speaking, a song like this typically bounces off of me musically. It's one of the things that we've talked about anytime that we've looked at Americana, and especially anything that was influenced by, stuff like Bob Dylan, is that the lyrics are usually interesting, the story they want to tell, they're very lyrically heavy types of music. We saw that in here. The vocalist never really stops. I'm sure getting through the lyrical dive on this is going to take some time, but the music is usually there to act as a vehicle. It's a very baseline idea. There's usually not a lot to talk about, and it's the part that sort of bores me, especially since I don't pick up lyrics on a first time listen. So for a song to go in that same Americana A B A B A B pattern and capture me musically, having me wonder what's around the corner while still retaining that, very traditional format, I find that to be exceptional. It's an interesting direction to go, and honestly, Jason makes it seem effortless here. I can't imagine this song any other way. It just is, and I love that about it. It's very cool to hear this song grow in the way that it does. Now, one of the ways that we see recontextualization in here is, as I mentioned, I think it was like 2.5 minutes in, when I mentioned a guitar off, just a little off to the left, playing the vocal melody. A slight difference to it, but we got to hear that same melody in a brand new sound, in a brand new timbre, from a brand new instrument. We also got to hear a little bit of embellishment on it too. It wasn't the exact same idea, it was altered in small ways, something that made it feel more like a guitar riff rather than a vocal melody. I like that. That ends up working very well. Another way that we see this is towards the end of the song as we begin to add harmonies on top of the vocal line. What it was originally something sung by a single person is now sung by a wider group of people. I think there is 3 or 4 vocals by the end of the song. I was trying to pick them out at the very end as we were getting the vocals isolated. I think it was like 3 or 4. That sounds great. I love it coming in there. It's a nice surprise, and it's a way to add growth. It allows the song to feel larger and more varied every time we get to that chorus again. But I think primarily how the layers get added on in this track isn't by recontextualizing ideas that we've already heard, but by introducing new ones. And these typically aren't riffs, they're not melodies. Usually they're chords, textures. There's a lot of texture work going on in here. In fact, that first guitar that we heard over here that lasted for pretty much the entire song, it was like 2 or 3 different notes. I mean, I suppose you could call that a riff if you want, but more so what I pulled from it is the texture of the guitar, which was probably the most distorted guitar on the song, and the rhythm of it, creating a bit of a energetic pace due to the syncopation in it that kind of pulled up the speed from everything else. But there's so many other textures in here, sounds that come in, unique instruments that don't play anything that really draw your attention to it, but widen out the sound, increase the palette, the scope that we're looking at within the song. It's what makes the track feel larger as we go on, but it's also what makes the sections feel fresh too. The atmosphere gets a new coat of paint every time we return to one of these sections. That's probably the safest way to go about doing this. In composition, you can only honestly have so many melody lines. Two is already plenty to juggle. Three is cumbersome but doable. Once you get past that, it's going to take a deft hand as far as composition and a good producer, especially in modern times, to ensure that there's not a lot of muddiness, there's no overlap, that there's room for all of these moving ideas. When it comes to harmony, you really got one. You have the chord progression. You can't really, you can do dual chord progressions. Uh, you better know what you're doing at that point, though, because you're going to be creating some complex harmonic and atmospheric sounds. Rhythms, yeah, you can have polyrhythms going on. That's always fun. We didn't really get much of that in here, though. We certainly had a variety of rhythmic ideas, but nothing that really pushed against the core pulse of the song. Everything was rather congruent in that realm. Well, those are your three main areas of composition. So past that, it's really easy to just add texture. Little ornamental ideas, things that can add flourish to the song, expand its scope without actually changing any of the core foundation. It's the ornaments that sit outside the song. It's or that sit on the Christmas tree. Uh, I don't know. I think I lost it on that one. My metaphors are my metaphors aren't always solid. It's it's one of the charms of the channel, I hope. Anyways, we have a lot of that. So many different guitar tones coming in, different types of instruments, different percussions, different vocal oohs and ahs that come in just to fill out space and add different textures to the song, just to change up the characteristic of this time through the chorus and to differentiate it from last time through the chorus. All of this works in reverse as well. I mentioned we have climbing and falling ideas, but after we hit the peak, the largest part of the song, layers get removed quickly. We don't have a slow descent back down. I think after that final chorus, we lost like 6 layers immediately. We were left with a pretty bare bone idea. The vocal stack, the vocal harmony was already exceptionally clear that first time through. And then from there, we were just losing multiple instruments on every 4 bar repetition until it was just the vocals and the drums, right? And then they just quit out altogether. A very rapid descent here. I think that's an interesting idea for a track called Farewell Transmission. It's about the ending. This is the last time I'm going to send this off. Whatever the transmission might be, a radio transmission, a video transmission, a phone call, whatever. This is it. This is the last time. That doesn't really dwindle. There is a point when that's just over. And I think you can kind of feel that coming on as the conversation, the transmission, the show, whatever it is wrapping up. You just feel it. Yep, this is it. There's only a few moments left, and then this won't exist anymore. And I kind of get that vibe from the music. It just rapidly starts decaying. I do. What's with the atmosphere on this one? Maybe atmosphere is the wrong word, although it certainly works. There's a bluesy, country, folky Americana thing going on here. It felt unexpected to begin with. For some reason, I was expecting Midwest emo on this, maybe indie rock. I was not expecting something country adjacent. It ended up growing on me, though, but what I find most interesting is somewhere around the midpoint of the song, it stopped feeling like that. It still existed in the foundation, but the song had grown so far beyond that scope that it was more of a remembrance of where we came from, more so than a core element of the characteristic of the song. The whole thing, also being Americana, just threw me off. I don't know why I was expecting something totally different, but I'm glad we got this. I was honestly a little taken aback at the start. I was like, oh, a folk track. Okay, we've done a lot of these. I'm not going to have a lot to talk about musically. Oh, I was proven wrong by that. But yeah, I was okay. by the end of the song, though, I was hooked. I enjoyed this. This is good stuff. And part of that mindset, I think if I had known this was folky going into it, I wouldn't have had to overcome that to start with. But I also don't know that my experience with this track would have been what it was. I think it might have been a bit lessened, might be. Because basically, when I figured out it was a folk track, I kind of set the bar a bit lower. Less music to talk about. It's going to be a lyrically heavy video. I can pay attention to it, but it's going to be a lot of repetition. I can really soak this one in on the emotional level. And, bringing that bar a bit lower for my analysis and then having to raise it back up afterwards, like, oh, no, no, there's stuff to think about here. The music gets deeper as we go. um, that always sets a really nice, experience up to overcome your expectations and deliver on something more so than you thought you were getting. That's always great. So I'm kind of glad I went into this with the wrong expectations. Anything else about that? I don't think there's anything else I want to add. Let's hit some lyrics. All right, we have a song here that, at least metaphorically, speaks about an end times. It says the whole place is dark, every light on the side of the town. Suddenly it all went down, and now we'll be the brothers of the fossil fire of the sun, sisters of the fossil blood of the moon. Someone must have set 'em up. Now they'll be working in the cold gray rock, in the hot mill steam, in the concrete. The sirens and the silences now, all this great setup, hearts all at once start to beat. This idea that even after we get put back into a pre-industrial time, no lights anywhere, that we'll all come together as brothers and sisters of the sun and the moon. It will be the light, the only light that we have. And we'll go back to working in the mills, in concrete, it says the cold gray rock. I think that's supposed to be about retreating back into the mines, possibly. He says, but regardless of all that, all of our hearts will once again start to beat. My interpretation of this is a rejection of modernity. Modernity. What a weird emphasis on that first syllable. A way of rejecting where we are at today and how disconnected technology has made us. And that one day, all this technology will be gone. For whatever reason, we will enter into what a lot of people would probably deem an apocalyptic time. And through that, our hearts will beat together again. That divide, that technological divide that's been put between us, will be erased. And we will all exist as humans once again. Verse 3 pushes on and says that he will lead if he needs to. He says, I will resurrect all of this, and I'll have a good go at it. I'll streak his blood across my beak, dust my feathers with his ash, and feel his ghost breathing down my back. I'll go out there and do what needs to be done, if that's what needs to happen. Now, I don't know what that means. Well, I don't know what he thinks needs to be done. He talks about streaking his blood across his beak and dusting his feather with ashes. Is he talking about showing to the world that he defeated something, someone, a person, an ideology? I don't know. The chorus says, I'll try, and know, whatever I try, that I will be gone, but not forever. Going on with this idea that he's going to try things. He's going to have a good go at it. Maybe in an attempt to bring us back to a better future. One that doesn't have so much division in it. But it doesn't explicitly say that. It just says he's going to try something. Verse 4 moves on into, I think, something that feels a bit more philosophical about life. He says the real truth about it is that no one gets it right. That we're all supposed to try. There's no end to the sands that I've been trying to cross. My kind of life is not better off. It's just the map that I've got. Basically saying we all have our own journey. He says he walks across the sands, his own personal desert. It's not better than anyone else's life. It's not any worse off either. It's just what makes sense to me. You just have to try at life. No one gets it right. No one understands what we're doing here. No one understands the big question of why. You just have to be. And everybody can try to be their own, and we should all accept that. We bring the chorus back, except instead of I will try, we've now changed it to we will try. And no matter what we try, we will be gone, but not forever. We bring back the idea about the real truth. He says, Mama, here comes midnight with the dead moon in its jaws. Must be the big star about to fall. This to me feels like it is, again, another apocalyptic event. This time, though, instead of just sending us backwards in technology, the big star about to fall feels like a cataclysmic event that's going to wipe out humanity. After this, we approach the outro, which is a lot of repetition of alternating lines. Long dark blues is every other line. The even lines switch out though. Will of the wisp, the big star is falling. Through the static and distance, a final transmission. Listen. Listen is said 4 times, and each time it is said, less and less instruments are present. I find this interesting. I figured the transmission was about the song itself, a message that needed to be heard. And maybe it still is. I think the song still is a positive message about unity and growth and trying to remove the divisions between us. But also, how it's literally stated right here, that a big star is falling through the static, and the distance a farewell transmission appears. You should listen to it. It almost makes it sound like the big star, what I assume to be a cataclysmic event, is the final transmission. And when it is heard, when it lands, when it hits, when the star falls, all that's left is silence at the end of the song. I think it works both ways, assuming that this is the end of humanity. The final transmission, last thing anyone said, what comes after that is silence, no matter what the transmission is supposed to represent. I find that to be a pretty powerful ending right there. There's a lot of lines in here that I don't quite get. I'm still not sure about the entire song as a collective, but I don't know, cherry picking like 70% of it out, it feels like a song about reconnecting with people and building back up stronger after tearing down what doesn't work. Whether that is through a random event, some sort of apocalypse, or by hand, it seems. In fact, maybe that's what verse 3 is about. If something doesn't return us back to an earlier time, he'll go out and do it, if he has to. Streak his blood across my beak. I will murder that which holds us down so that we can grow stronger, if that's how we need to grow. This whole song just says that as humanity, though, we need to reconnect with each other. And whether that's through forces outside our control or a force within my control, we can remove the hurdles that stop us from growth. I find it interesting then that the outro is as pessimistic as it is, at least to me, calls it a long, dark blues. The song is very bluesy. I think that's an interesting thing. It's also a long song. I don't know, it's kind of dark. It's not a bright and poppy song, but it's not a heavy, weighty track either. Maybe subjectively we could call this song a long, dark blues. That is repeated over and over, though, a bit of negativity. The rest of the song is let's rise out of our low point, and we end the song with a repetition of long, dark blues, followed by a big star falling and silence. And I'm not sure how to work that into the rest of my understanding of this track. But if this star is something that is continuously coming closer, the descent is, coming towards the earth, and the danger is becoming more near. In a literal sense, this is obviously a metaphor here. But I find it interesting that the music gets louder over time. It becomes more attention grabbing. This final transmission, it needs to be heard. What starts out as a bit of a whimper, maybe we could describe it, is a thunderous roar by the end that, as the star makes impact, we're left with silence. No human voices left. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be about then. A cry for us to remove division and work together to improve where we are at, but a little too late. Or maybe just can't get people to rally. No matter what it is, he can't get people to work together, and so we meet our doom because of our inability to reach over the fence. These are my thoughts. Songs Ohia, Farewell Transmission. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, please put all of those thoughts and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for this one. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.